Okay. Well, I'll just give you. My name's Rosie Walter, and I am have been working, not working, but supporting the access to records with the University of London, amongst other people, with other people. And I'm also somebody who's brought up in the care system, and I was also a social worker for 25 years. So and I'm just here to introduce you today. So welcome. And so you're Karen Smith from Liverpool University, and you're going to talk about your experience, your journey, and yes, and let us know what you think about things. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So off you go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everyone. So I'm gonna hopefully tell you a little bit about my journey. So I was born in 1971, and the only representations of me at that time was this statue that I used to see every time we went to the local shop. I was born inside out, upside down and back to front. I wore calipers till I was 8. I was told I was deformed, and I was a spastic. So in all her failings, my mum felt that the best way she could prepare me for life was to call me all the negative names she could think of, so that when I heard those names at school or in the street, I wouldn't be upset by them. So as much as they appear to be emotionally neglectful or abusive, they, in her mind, they were her best way to prepare me for life. And as I grew up, I was forced to play with kids in the street, even though I couldn't walk very well and definitely couldn't run. But again, my mum would say, go out and play. You've got to go out and play with the other kids in the street because you're just like them and they know better than you. And what that did was give me drive and passion to be like other people and not see myself as different. And I don't know if that was good or bad, but at some point we had ladies that came to our house with tweed skirts and sensible shoes, and we were told to hide behind the sofa. And so we did. We hid behind the sofa on and off for a number of years from the ladies in the sensible shoes, until at some point my next older brother, there were 4 of us at home, my next older brother went into residential care, and I was left at home. The 2 older ones had left home. I was left at home, and I still question which one of us got the worst deal, because being disabled, I was compliant. I was also a high achiever. So part of my disability meant I was also really ill all of the time. And that meant I had to stay on the sofa, being cared for and drinking Lucozade. And part of being cared for meant I was forced, excuse me, I've still got COVID. I was forced to learn to read. And of course that has its benefits. I was allowed to read Enid Blyton, and so I got lost in the faraway tree very regularly. But I also read the local newspapers for something to do. And again, being able to read and understand the world around you gives you a new perspective. But by learning to read, I was also a high achiever. And I think having the experience that I've got now as a qualified social worker and youth worker means that I understand what a high achieving child can do. And again, the assessment would have meant that I was more likely to be left at home. So from there, I was left at home. We moved from house to house, as many children do who are in the care system. My brother absconded time and time again. He was in Borstal. He went to prison. He's been in prison for very long periods for attempted murder. I have mothered my older brothers and sister until I got to a place in my own life where I decided I had to stop parenting them and try and look after myself. And that meant I decided, just around about the age of 8, that I just didn't want to grow up and be like them. I didn't want to have a baby at 16. I didn't want to go to Borstal, and I didn't want to be a heroin addict. And that meant I needed to do something like go to college. So I studied and I worked really hard at school. And that meant, I didn't want to be like those people. I wanted to be better than them. But that then alienated me from my brothers and sister. And I resisted. That was what I did. I resisted being like my family. And in that case, they resisted being like me. And they didn't want to be with me in that case. So skip forward a few years. I went to Open University, and that opened my mind. And I had to go to Open University because I had a job. And having a job meant I couldn't give up earning money. After Open University, I went to Chester University, and I realised I didn't belong there because there were lots of people around me who were very studious and had come from homes not like mine. From Chester, I went to Salford, and it felt very much more down to earth. And there I learned about social work. I did a master's in social work. And then I decided actually social work wasn't for me. It was too prescriptive. And that led me to Liverpool University, where I'm now studying for a PhD. And what I'm doing is trying to find out what drives women in particular to do well when they leave care, because we know, and actually I got really sick of hearing people who leave care struggle and don't do well. But I know that lots of people who leave care do well, because actually I work with care leavers as a PA, and I know so many of them do really, really well. And if doing well means what you do is hold down a tenancy, or do your shopping on your own, or cope in a crisis, those things are not measured. Doing well means for local authorities ticking a box or getting an apprenticeship at 18, when we know most care leavers tend not to do well until they're in the mid-20s or late 20s, and we lose all of that. So I'm now doing a PhD where I think people might listen to me if I have doctor in front of my name. So that's where I am today. And I'm really interested in being able to tell people how moving around the system fractures who we are, and where we belong, and where we belong either to ourselves or to other people or to places. What we know is we are moved about so much through the system. Sorry, I need to have a quick drink. We're moved about so much through the system that actually when young people say to me things like, "Carry my head's kettled," or "there's too much going on in my mind," how can you possibly say I need to think about where I want to live, or I need to think about getting a job, or what I want to do when I'm 18? All of that stuff is too much. I actually think, yeah, I get it, I agree with you, because even now, at my old age, I still think, well, I don't really know what I want to do when I grow up. So how can we expect younger people preparing to leave care to actually know what they want to do? So, excuse me. So I think we need to focus more on encouraging young people to feel like they belong somewhere. And I think when we're settled and we know who we are ourselves and where we belong and whether that's, where we belong in a place or to ourselves, we can feel like we can focus more. And that's kind of where I'm working now. So, and some of that goes back to where we start in our care journey. And I know certainly along with our accessing our records, and it's a role I've done in the past, young people don't have access to their own memories. And again, this is what I know through the young people I work with. One young woman I worked with and still have a lot of contact with, who's almost 30. I met at 16 and she come to the UK from South Africa with nothing. And I was very lucky that she went to a foster carer who kept everything in a box, kept all her photographs, all her important papers, and even kept, when this young woman kept access to records and asked the foster carer to keep her court papers for her, kept them too, until very recently she went back there to collect everything, and it was wrapped in a beautiful box. It was perfect. And then the young lady messaged me. She sent me a message on WhatsApp with a photograph of the court paper, and the name was wrong. The name wasn't her name on the court paper. So even though I've been saying, oh, this is just so good that everything's there in one place and it's all been kept brilliantly, her name was wrong on her paper. But very few young people have their stuff kept in a place that follows them around, and that's not right. Whether it's kept wrapped in a box, in a container or a cardboard box, memories are not kept. And we know what we forget things, and our memories change. So something needs to be done about, how that happens, and it's really important. And we know that life story work doesn't happen and should happen. But for young people in care who move around so much, we know for one man, he moved 51 times and wrote a book about it. Those memories should be moving forward with them, and that should happen now. And if it's not happening now, something else needs to change, because memories are really precious. If we don't have that, we don't have who we are. And for instance, one young person I worked with, these were her files. That was their whole life in that file. And when she started to read them, she didn't know what they meant, because a lot of that was jargon or handwritten in a way that she couldn't understand, or of course redacted. So again, we need to find a way to make somebody's life or memories understandable. And I spent a really long time with this woman in particular. We spent about 2 days every 2 months, just very slowly going through her file. And even though it wasn't my role, it was really important that somebody did that with her, because there was a lot of information there that she didn't know, had no memory of, and had not been shared that information with. So again, that for instance, there were no photographs either, and she had no concept of any of that stuff happening to her as a child. And her identity had been completely broken. So this is what I wanted to, this is what I'm working on at the moment, about our identity. When every time we move, our identity is broken down and changed and stretched and reimagined.
Karen, sorry to interrupt you, Karen, but we need to sort of it's extremely interesting, I know, and wish we had more time, but we do need to in about 2 minutes or so, could you sort of work towards, and yes, we could hear more from you another time.
Okay, this is So what I wanted to show you was, if you imagine every time we go to a new placement, we meet, we meet in our foster placement, we meet, we're going to say this is an ideal family, by the way. foster carers who've got 2 grandparents on either side and then 10 sets of aunties and uncles, and so we behave in a way that fits in with those people. And then for whatever reason that placement breaks down, so we go somewhere else. We meet 2 sets of grandparents on either side of that family, including the foster family and their children, and 10 more, aunties and uncles on either side. And then we move again. So we adapt and change to fit in with more grandparents and aunties and uncles. But we move again, and so we adapt and change and meet, new foster carers, new siblings on the foster carers side, more aunties and uncles. So we adapt and we change, and we may speak differently, or we may even go to a different school. And then we move again, we move again, and we move again, and we move again. I've done that 10 times, I think, and so we adapt and change to fit in with at least 80 people, never mind new friendships. So when eventually what we lose is the essence of who we are, until we come to the end of our life in care. We've got no idea who we are at all. So that's where we're at the end of our care journey, with no idea of who we are, no essence of ourselves.
Thank you, Karen, for that very powerful message, and it's so true. I'm sure many of us will have a similar view about it. But anyway, thank you ever so much. Thank you. I think
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's fantastic to hear all that, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing all those important insights, and thanks, Rosie, for chairing the session. So I'm